Hi, everybody. It's another C3UG video for you. My name is Graham, calling from Brightech Systems in Vancouver, and we have Heiko.
Hi, my name is Heiko Voigt from Harbor Light in Halifax. Mike?
Yeah, hi, my name is Mike Green. I'm a technical specialist with IBM's Channels Collaboration Organization. Colin?
Colin Breckles with Castlebrack in Ontario. Graham.
And we also have with us a fellow IBM champion that we saw do a presentation at IBM Think this year who's come to share with us. Amy, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Amy Stonesifer from sunny Houston, Texas. Great to be here with y'all today.
All right, and as I said, we saw your presentation at IBM Think this year. Please share with us what your topic is.
So, hi, I'm Amy Stonesifer. I work for a company called Memorial Hermann, and I'm going to be sharing with you a story about how Hurricane Harvey forced Memorial Hermann Healthcare to connect and collaborate. This is our adoption story and our roadmap that we created for connections.
We're going to work. We're going to work. We work at the hospital. We're nurses.
We were scheduled to get married this weekend in Houston, but we know that we have friends and family members who were impacted by Hurricane Harvey. So we canceled our large reception and we asked everyone to come out here and donate blood today.
So that gave you an idea of what we went through. And Memorial Hermann is a healthcare system. We're a very large one, and we're in Southeast Texas, one of the largest non-for-profit systems in the United States. So we have 19 hospitals, and geographically Houston is huge, so we're covering a large area. We have over 26,000 employees and over 5,500 physicians who are affiliated to us. So we had a plan. Our Connections adoption plan was developed pretty much from going to events like Think and Connect and meeting other customers and IBMers and getting ideas of how could we share with our employees the value of connections on how to connect and collaborate. We talked to customers like Southwest Airlines, UPS, Wells Fargo, and Fluor, and we learned things from how to promote connections, how to set up our governance for connections, and what things were working at their companies to get connections rolling. So one of the key things we found that was value for us was we have multiple facilities, so each facility building its own page for the launch, and having some support documents so people could kind of self-service themselves and get comfortable with what Connections was all about. So the key things I will tell you in our plan were leadership support. Each of our facilities has a CEO, and that CEO and their key leaders had to get behind us and agree that, hey, we're going to have a facility page, we're going to blog, we're going to interact with our employees. We also had corporate comm as our partner through this. So our corporate communications team actually moved Forefront, which is our biweekly newsletter to employees, onto Connections. And we saw the value of being externally accessible. We'd never had something that people could go to the direct URL and sign in and get to something without having that VPN wall up. So Connections with Forefront, the newsletter on it, could be accessible from home on your own computer or through the mobile app. And then we built a promotion campaign. And we were all ready to go to promote the move of our company news and the resources for our individual campuses. And then Hurricane Harvey hit. You saw in the video just kind of the craziness that was going on. I mean, you can imagine widespread flooding. Many of our facilities were not harmed in any way, but they all were islands. So all of a sudden, everybody was displaced. And you can see some of these pictures. We had over 49 inches of rain. So even the best laid plans of the city, this rain was not going to drain quickly. Our employees were doing everything they could to get to work, but couldn't. Our employees had been evacuated to other cities in the Texas region. They were maybe in a shelter. They were maybe on the second floor of their home because their first floor was flooded. How could we communicate with all these people? And how could we continue to serve our patients in our facilities? So Connections was the road that brought us all together. So we had this adoption plan, and fortunately, we were far along on that adoption plan. But we hadn't quite got everybody in. So this kind of drove people to Connections very quickly. Our CEO sent out an email with, hey, we've got these resources for you. We need to connect with you. We need to know that you're safe. We need to know what you need. And so we posted that link on our public.org site. The CEO sent out an email, and then we made sure people knew how they could sign on and very quickly get into their account and find out what was going on. We had 4 distinct communities we used. One which was resources, so people could find out what do you do when your house floods? How do I find information? We also wanted to check in. Are you safe? Are you able to come to work? Because we were needed to bring people in. But it was a number of days before the flooding reduced enough where people could actually travel outside of boat and helicopter. We also wanted to connect employees with each other. It was amazing that people could reach out to one another and offer things. Someone might have somewhere for you to stay. Many cars were lost in the storm. Maybe you still had a car and you could help someone get to work as the floodwaters receded. Harvey brought our community together like never before, and people were offering to bring people things or to house people. And then the last community was our Harvey High Fives, and this is where people touted each other for being there during the storm and taking care of our patients and supporting each other. So 4 unique use cases. The one that I found most interesting was helping us manage after the storm. With 19 unique facilities and really over 300 facilities over the entire region, we needed to understand where was their damage, where was their need. So we used the survey app in Connections to gather data twice a day. Each of the CEOs would report on the survey app answering a series of questions. I need blood, or what drugs do I need? Do I need additional staffing? What are those needs? What's the damage I have? Gathering this information, we were able to react very quickly and use our fleet of life flight helicopters, which you saw in the video, to very critical items across the organization: blood, physicians, and drugs that were needed. So at the end of this is the quote from my VP of Corporate Communications. During the height of the storm, the tool became an invaluable lifeline for thousands of employees seeking updates and information about the status of business operations. Employees could access MH Connections not just from Memorial Hermann computers connected to the network, but also from their home computers and their mobile devices via Connections mobile app. They could report status updates and critical needs without VPN or even a computer from anywhere on any device. This is really a testament to how this worked for us.
And question, where were you in all of this? Were you able to get into work?
I was sitting right here in my home office. No, I couldn't. It was funny because my CIO called and said, "Where are you? We'll send someone to get you." And I'm like, "You can't get to me. We're flooded in." We were safe and sound, but there was no leaving this community. And that was what was happening for a lot of employees. At least those of us in IT could still get online, because unlike other hurricanes, this was not a windstorm. This was a water event. So I never lost electricity, never lost my internet connection. So I was able to continue to support the organization. And that's very rare in a hurricane situation.
This is Mike. I got a question. Can you tell me, what features of Connections got used the most?
The blog feature and the survey feature. So the blog gave people the opportunity to say, hey, I have it clothes for a 4-year-old. Actually, we used the forum app so people could talk back and forth and they could see what each other was saying. So it was forums, blogs, and surveys. We also linked a lot of content, both bookmarks to organizations that would help you with your house, details from Red Cross on how to cut out the sheetrock in your home if it was flooded. So a lot of great features were immediately used by the team. And the thing that was cool was that they could figure out how to use it without any training. We just said, hey, go here and press share and start to type up what you need. Mm-hmm. And someone was moderating and releasing those items.
Awesome. I've always thought that surveys was kind of an underused thing. I mean, I use it a lot and it's so handy. And like you said, people, it's intuitive. They know how to use it and it's invaluable for gathering information that obviously helped you guys as you were going through your ordeal there. So thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you. Which app were you using to track who could and could not report for work?
So that was kind of a tie to something we created back end, and we were just linking to it and pulling that into a database for us. So Connections was the connection to it. And so we could find out who the employee was and ask them just 3 questions. Are you safe? Can you report to work?
Neat.
I'm thinking about the fact that users found it reasonably intuitive to start using it. I'm curious if you've got anything that, people who weren't necessarily, I don't know, I guess I'm just curious about the number of people who were able to get up and working on it really quickly. It seems like this was adoption almost not necessarily by accident, but without you having to do a lot of work, it just worked for a lot of people. I'm curious if there were any sort of neat stories about people who really were able to adopt it well.
I think the thing that was the story I heard was when people were asking for help and sharing help. I had someone who, their house was flooded and they were devastated and they didn't really know what to do. So they just got on the site and said, hey, I don't know what to do. My house was flooded. Everything's sitting around me. I don't know where to start. And her CEO of her facility and coworkers showed up at her house and helped cut away the sheetrock and drag everything out of the house. So the fact that they could easily understand how to go and post something and that people were actually watching and engaged enough to reach out like that was amazing.
Wow.
It was pretty simple to use, and that was what was cool. I mean, we did use the rich content editor boxes to give a little bit more, like, hey, press this and type, And
how long was it before the water actually receded?
It depended on the area you were in. It was up to 4 days where you could kind of get places.
Right.
So Houston was actually hit by this storm 3 times. So the whole event went on for about a week. And then the recovery was days after.
Right.
I couldn't get to my corporate headquarters for about 6 days because the main thoroughfare was completely flooded to get there. And if you went the other way, everybody else was going the other way to try to get to work. Wow. So we ended up just continuing to work from home, waiting for the water to recede enough so that they could do road repairs so we could then go to work. It was phenomenal how quickly the city got back on its feet.
Wow. Okay, so then what happened next?
So what happened next is we had a new story to tell. So people had been in the product and they were pretty, it seemed pretty simple. So now this was the original idea. It's called iGenerate. So let me just expand this page out so you can see it. And iGenerate was what we were going to do to help adoption. So iGenerate is, hey, who do you ask on ways to improve your organization other than your employees? So our CEO challenged us to come up with an idea from every employee. And it was on innovation, cost savings, and patient experience. How can we take ideas that our employees have and gather them and then have those ideas turn into reality? So there's teams in each of our facilities that are actually taking these ideas and trying to figure out if they're doable. Those teams read through the idea, and you can see these example here. The employee enters their idea. So up top is where we're using the rich content editor to actually tell you what do we want and what are you going to do. To the right is a listing of some of the ideas coming in and their status. So someone opens the idea, puts it under review, and they begin to try to figure out what's going on. The neat thing about the ideation blog is, like blogs and forums, they can actually add a lot of detail, and they can actually insert pictures. We had people actually give us links to sites where, hey, people were doing this, or pictures of where they'd seen this done somewhere else. So as the team reviews these ideas and marries them through the system, we can talk about these stories of great ideas that have become either new standards for our organization or have become an improved experience for our patients. So iGenerate has saved us millions of dollars. $2 million saved when I first built this presentation, and that number has grown greatly. We have a story of an idea with a prescription change that has actually been picked up and is been in a journal as a recommendation. We have two patents pending on 2 items that were sent in. We have one of the best stories I have is on ventilators. If you're familiar, in a hospital, people are put on ventilators to help them breathe. And there was actually a filter on the ventilator that we were paying a company to replace every time the ventilator was used. And it turns out that really didn't make sense to be doing that. And that cost savings was a few $100,000 that multiplied. So every idea that comes out of one facility, as it multiplies through the organization, can save us substantially more than it originally was planned.
I'll pose a question in a second, but I was going to ask about mandatory use cases. It struck me how you said your communications leader moved your forefront newsletter, and there were a few, and the storm itself made some pretty darn mandatory use cases. So that's always been a quick way to get adoption. In your case, it was totally forced, but maybe you could expand on that if there's any other mandatory use cases that people had to use it and it got them in there and using the tool.
Well, so one of the things I'd say is that the facility pages, so we have our portal, which is DX9, and you have a handful of people who are trained to post content there. Whereas Connections, you can have everyone in that facility adding stuff. So they have a chili cook-off. Everyone can add pictures for the chili cook-off. Employee recognition. So some things aren't necessarily mandatory, but by use case became like, this is the best way to go. So-and-so got a promotion, way to go. This hospital won an award, everybody's commenting. So those type of cases moved on their own. Now, a use case going forward that will push our adoption further is that we're finally going to be at a point where we can get everyone off of SharePoint by the end of this year. And when we originally bought Connections, we had so many things we were implementing at the same time, we kind of paused on forcing those moves, and we kept babysitting this very antiquated version of SharePoint before we were forcing people to come to Connections and saying, this is it, you've got to adopt. So that is definitely the forced adoption coming. This year, as our goal is to leave the SharePoint sites and bring them all into Connections.
But generally, they've already had a wonderful experience with Connections, so it's not like you're forcing them to. There's a positive place to go that's going to be a better place for sharing content.
And I think that whole collaboration, being able to talk back and forth, it has not been our culture to have a venue to cheer other people on or comment, and that culture is changing with Connections very slowly. I mean, people still are going to be slow to put their name out on something, but it has been interesting to see how something so difficult has pushed us to try and add our voice to things throughout our organization. Something as simple as, hey, I see something I don't think we should be doing that I think we could do more effectively, to, hey, I just want to rally on the rest of my team. Yay, we won this award. And we are a pretty impressive bunch at Memorial Hermann. There are a lot of awards won, so it's kind of cool to see those come across Connections.
That's pretty awesome. Like the general premise of the mandatory use case isn't we're putting a gun to your head and making you use a system. It's usually along the notion of here's this process that employees already do somewhere, and they kind of have to do it to facilitate their job. And now that's going to live in Connections. Or here's something new they have to do that they didn't already do, but now they do, and that's going to live in Connections. It's just a way to get them into Connections, and then once they're in, they see all the wonderful things it can do for them. Well, in your case, that was on steroids. It was a millionfold what a normal organization would go through.
Yeah, I do not recommend having a hurricane to increase your adoption. That's one of the things that I said at Think that has been tweeted and posted various places, which just cracked me up. That's going to be what I'm going to be remembered for at Think.
So you're continuing with adoption and continuing to have to kind of promote it and move it along?
And I think that's what's key. I'm going to bring my slides back up, and the adoption story doesn't end. So yeah, that's their initial, hey, how are we going to do this and how are we going to get excitement? But you need to have a plan, gain support, and be innovative. And that never ends. You know, like I talked about at the beginning, leadership support is so important. But it's not just your CEOs, it's also key leaders, as well as key leaders not by title. So think about who are the subject matter experts in your organization. For us, a great deal of those people are educators at all different levels for all different reasons. And those people have been instrumental in the adoption. They're quickly moving over from SharePoint because they want to be the first there, and they're spreading the word. So that's really important, is finding those people who will support you because they want to use the tool, because they're excited about the tool. How can you have definite pages that people will have to go to find out information or want to go to rally on their teams? The facility pages for us. It gives people a spot to go to become familiar with the product and not feel like, oh gosh, what is this thing? The partnership with key leadership, corporate communication was huge for us. And they have developed a following of using Forefront out there. And it's different. It looks different. It feels different. And people can comment. We've never had that before. It's always been a stagnant email that came out to you. External access is another huge plus. If you want adoption, you need people to be able to get to the tool various ways. And opening it up to externally for our employees has helped a great deal. I would say from a promotion campaign, you could do, if you have a budget, it would be great to do some fun stuff. One of the things Southwest Airlines had done was actually had videos that they did. So we tried to do some videos to kind of communicate that, but they had some slick promotional stuff. Another company, Floor, had a whole campaign with a whole phrase tied to the name they call Connections with postcards that came out. So I encourage you to reach out to other companies and find out what they did. It'll help you a great deal in your adoption campaign. Seeking out those others and getting their pitfalls too. I mean, I heard from a couple people, don't do this, go this route. So that helped us a lot. External access I talked about, and promotion. We talked about involve others, gaining support, and being innovative. So the being innovative slide to the far right, it's kind of hidden by our faces, but think of ways to bring people into the tool that allow them to experience the features. We have a group called Clinical Care Redesign, which is people trying to improve healthcare and trying to standardize things so it's more effective for the patient. So they each have, there's many communities that contain information that people specific to that group. It could be a narrow thing, like it could be cardiac or Pediacare or whatever that unique group is. It's kind of neat. It may only be 20 users, but getting those people comfortable with the tool permeates throughout your organization. So I would say spending the time to educate people, attend as many sessions as you can to promote the tool, have yourself a 60-second commercial and have yourself a 5-minute presentation that highlights the key value of Connections. and then having a strong site for them to go to learn more about Connections that you've built custom looking for your team with pictures and words, because we all know some of us are more visual than we are listening to stuff. So meet people where they are and continue to take feedback and react to that feedback. Our Connections journey has really just begun, even though it's been out there for almost 3 years now for us. And Hurricane Harvey helped us over some hurdles, and iGenerate has kept us in the forefront. And I hope that we continue to find ways to drive people into Connections.
I'll agree with that. The Connections environment that I'm most familiar with is constantly having to be paid attention to in terms of adoption. We had a really strong adoption case, not as strong as yours, but very similar a few years ago. And then it tailed off again. So it's certainly something that resonates with me, your story, in terms of having to pay attention and continue to keep it going.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that too. I really, really like what you said about adoption. So as a technical specialist working with business partners and their customers, adoption is absolutely key. And it sounds like you guys had somewhat of a forced way of getting there, but like one, to make a plan, don't just throw it out there and hope people will start using it. And then the second piece that I really liked was involving others, because like once some people start to use it, then other people will say like, oh, hey, how did you know that? Where did you get that piece of information? How did you do that? And then the value of this thing really starts to grow. So that's absolutely fantastic. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, well done. The plan seemed sound before the hurricane hit too. You had key stakeholder support. You had communications on board, which is huge. You did a lot of things right from the appearance of it.
All right, Amy, and I kind of cut you off there when before your last slide, but you had shared your contact info, so people can get in touch with you. I know you're part of the Champions program, so you're out there and available.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And, I've loved the product, and I'd be glad to share anything that helped us on our journey, just as others helped us. And I appreciate the opportunity to share with y'all our connection story.
All right. Well, thank you very much again, and we will look forward to hearing from you in the future.